Penguin Random House Audio presents Oksana Behave by Maria Kuznetsova. Read for you by Anna Hooton. You never reach any truth without making 14 mistakes, and very likely 114. Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. 1992, Kyiv, Ukraine. After I asked what America would be like, my grandmother sighed philosophically and released a mouthful of smoke out the passenger window. America, Ukraine, it's all the same in the end, Baba said, as her brother Boris drove us to the station. We just need a change, that's all. Some things will be better in America and some will be worse, she declared, taking another drag on her cigarette. But think of all the men. I was only 7, so this wasn't much of a selling point. Mama and Papa were quiet on either side of me in the back seat, offering no consolation or clarification. For the last few months, they had stayed up late whispering about leaving Kyiv, and during the day they left to say goodbye to friends until it was our turn to go, when their remaining friends came over to say goodbye to us. I didn't really know why we were leaving. All I knew was that we were at the start of a long journey that would end in a place called Florida, a land of beaches and theme parks. And now we were speeding by the Dnieper River and the rolling hills and maple trees I couldn't imagine living without, even on this gray November day. When will we be back? I said. Never, Mama answered. Very soon, darling, Papa said. In a while, foolish child, said Baba, when our hearts are healed and hungry for this place once more. Will our hearts be healed by New Year's? I asked. I had been looking forward to my school's New Year's party where the teachers let me run around without punishing me and where I could steal a few tangerines and chocolates when they weren't looking. Do not be sad, Oksana, Papa said, though he seemed quite sad himself. Kyiv is in your soul. You can return there anytime you want. He tapped my heart for emphasis. Dearest God, I don't believe in, Mama said, shaking her head. What did I do to deserve such a silly child? Who cares about Kyiv, darling? You have your family with you, lucky fool. Everything you need is right here. Baba pointed her cigarette at me. You know what your problem is, she said. Having an annoying family, I asked. You ask too many questions. What's there to know, little idiot? You are born, you have some laughs, and a rendezvous or two, and then you fall into the void. Just try to enjoy the ride, darling, she added before turning away. I didn't see it at the time, but everyone's conduct during the rest of the drive captured their distinct approaches to life. There was Papa watching the Dnieper flow by, with longing and misty eyes. Mama with her hands on her lap, looking forward and wishing we'd hurry up already. Baba fluffing her bright red hair and scoping out the romantic prospects on the street. Her brother Boris driving with a smirk, not caring about the lipstick on his collar, the high heel in his back seat, or about staying behind. And then there was me, always in the dark, not knowing that this was the last day all of us would ever spend in Kyiv together, or that Florida would just be the first stop in a series of places I would try to call home, stomping and howling, desperate for someone to tell me what would happen next. I pledge allegiance to the butterfly. We had been living in Gainesville, Florida for a year when Officer Friendly told my 3rd grade class that you could call 911 from home and the cops would show up right away. Nobody else seemed as stunned by his revelation as I was, but that was no surprise. I had been released from ESL at the start of my 2nd school year in America, and there were a lot of things I was slow to learn. Like, for example, why people called me Rod. I thought it was because I was Russian, or just scrawny, but one day Billy Spencer sang, "Have I told you lately that I love you?" at me, and I figured out it was Rod for Rod Stewart, because I had a bit of a mullet. Mama chopped it off, but the name stuck. The only people who used my real name were my teacher, Mrs. Thomas, and my ESL friend, Raluca, or I should say ex-friend, because she moved back to Romania over the summer without telling me. I tried not to take it personally. Cassandra called me Okie Dokie, which was definitely closer to Oksana than Rod. We only talked after class when we walked to the lobby so she could get picked up by her mom, and I could cross the street to meet my grandmother behind the clump of palm trees where I made her wait. But the day after the officer's visit, Baba was flirting with Mr. Travers, the crossing guard, by the front entrance, dangerously on display. Kids swarmed around like the ants in our kitchen looking for their buses or parents or just their friends to walk home with, and nobody seemed to notice her. Baba squeezed the crossing guard's arm, her fiery hair flying in all directions, her purple dress flailing about her high-heeled, veiny legs. Cassandra spotted her and said, "Yuck! Your mom is even older than my mom." "That's my grandma." "Oh," she said, disappointed. "How old is she, anyway?" I knew my parents were 31, but I had no idea how old Baba was. "No clue. 80, 90, something like that," I said. No one at school had spotted her before, and it made me twitch. I said, "You really think if I call the cops, they'll come?" Her eyes grew wide. Yes, she said. "Call the cops." "What do I say?" She rubbed her hands together. "Say, help! My grandma's trying to kill me." "All right," I said. As Baba caressed Mr. Trevor's arms and then his stop sign, it sounded like the truth. "Okie dokie, okie dokie. I'm flying away," Cassandra said, flapping her hands like wings, which had to do with her saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the butterfly instead of the flag every morning, a ritual that baffled and intrigued me. She flew off to her mom, a silver-haired lady who waited for her in a jeep, merciful enough to never step out and embarrass her. But Baba had no mercy for me. I approached her with my head down, incognito. Thankfully, she had taken a step away from her prospect. Mr. Travers was a nice bald war veteran. He lifted a hand at us and said, "Have a nice day, Sveta. Have a nice day, Oksana." Baba winked and strutted away. She leaned toward me and said, "Such biceps." "A cop came to class," I told her. "He was nice." "Some are," she said. Then she told a boring story about one summer in Odessa in 1957 when a police officer named Bobik wrote a song about her legs. The sun baked us along Main Street, also known as Prostitute Street. It was covered in broken glass and only had a couple of palms for shade. It ran along the Pick and Save, where Baba took me to get a doll once a month, Dick's Adult Video, and a gas station with an inflatable alligator in front of it. Lizards scattered at our feet. There were always a few kingdoms on the ground, little deflated balloons. Men put them over their things to have sex with the prostitutes. I never saw actual prostitutes there, but sometimes men would honk or slow down and shout at Baba, and she didn't know why. Mama and Papa said not to tell her, because she needed the attention since her daughter had just died. Her husband had kicked it a while back, her father had been purged, her morning work at the lab was unpaid, the Soviet Union had just collapsed, she had to share a room with me, her family had been gutted by fascism, the world was cruel and unwelcoming, etc. She got one honk and tittered. "Your grandma still has it all, doesn't she?" "Are you 80 or 90? She laughed. 80 or 90 what, dear child?" She realized what I meant and pretended to choke me. 55 years young, hardly old at all, infinite imbecile. She walked a few steps ahead of me the rest of the way. When we got home, I knew Mama was napping because it was quiet. If the TV was on, then she was applying for accountant jobs or trying to learn English or silently weeping or calling her best friend Valentina, who lived in a place called New Jersey. Everyone my parents knew back in Ukraine was in New Jersey now, except Mama's mom, who had stayed in Kiev because her mind was too troubled. But we were in Florida because that was where Papa found a job as a physicist for the university. It didn't seem like such a great job to me because he also had to deliver pizza for Dino's. I went to the room I shared with Baba while she smoked on the patio. The carpet was brown and crawling with cicadas, and the walls displayed a photo of Baryshnikov framed in a heart and her dead daughter's painting of the Dnieper, A dark blue river with a white sandy beach on its far...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?